Okay, everybody, this is Sheets, and I'm going to be going over the NASCAR Cup race for Daytona for, I guess, depending on when you're watching this, today, tomorrow, but for Saturday. And I'm really looking forward to this from a DFS GPP perspective for a lot of reasons. I don't know if I'm going to get a chance to watch it, but watching it's going to be incredibly entertaining because of there's always wrecks or threat of wrecks, and it's always tremendous sweat with respect to DFS. But I think it's an incredibly instructive race from the perspective of how to attack GPPs and how to attack any endeavor where you're trying to balance ownership with possibility of results and range of outcomes and things like that, because this is a race that, forget the people who are just awful at NASCAR, okay? We're going to presume that you're competing against people who are between average and really good at NASCAR, all right? Especially if you're going to enter these tournaments that allow 150 entries, you're competing against some tough customers, right? So what you're going to need to do is figure out what they're doing and realize that you can fade that. The variance involved in a plate race and in this race at Daytona is so high, and I can get into some details of why that is. I mean, just because the way that the packages are designed and the way the drafting works, these cars are just going to be just so close to one another that it's just going to be nearly impossible for anyone, first of all, to just get off and lead laps for the whole race. Number two, there aren't that many laps to lead in the first place. There's just so much room to pass throughout the course of the laps. And everybody's so close. There's so many opportunities for people to bump and be aggressive and wreck and the whole field get taken out that it's just uber ultra variance, okay? So what was developed over the last couple of years is a very, very sound strategy to playing these things, which was, well, it's no big deal. What you're supposed to do mathematically is just take the people that are all the way in the back of the field, okay? Because, think about it logically. If there's the chances of a wreck, if number one, you might be in the back and just kind of see it in front of you and be able to avoid it. Number two, if you do wreck, you're not going to lose that many place differential points. You might end up only with, say, -2, as opposed to, say, let's say Kevin Harvick wrecks in the first lap. He's like -30 or whatever, okay? So, and you'll find that you can cash in some lineups with some negatives. You might not win with some negatives, but you do want to get, hopefully 6 guys finishing the race. Although even that's not easy sometimes. So that was the strategy that was developed over the last several years, and that's what most people do, right? They make sure to stack as many people in the back as possible, and mathematically that certainly makes a lot of sense. So then what happens is that everybody starts doing that, and then this push and pull occurs between, well, how do I differentiate myself then from those people who are just doing that, okay? And so what you then get, number one, is you get a bunch of dead money, meaning people that are just saying, I don't screw those people that stack the back. I'm just going to play Harvick. I'll play the guys in the front and play like any other race. They're dead, okay? So you don't have to worry about them, but you have to figure out really how to fade and how to pivot off of what most people have agreed is mathematically a good way to play, okay? So let's start with a couple of things. First of all, look, from a sample size perspective, when you're dealing with anything with high variance, the sample size you're going to get in a freaking auto race is not that high, right? So, but if you do look at the history of these types of races, the GPPs are not won by, say, 6 guys, all of them 20 and below, right? There's always somebody that's in the top 10 or 15 or something like that. An average, I think, of almost 1.25 guys have been in the top 12 in the winning lineup of these things. An average of, I think, 1.25 guys have been in this next 12. So it's not as if you just, chop off the top 20 and then just play the top 20, because it's not that easy either. You know what I mean? Like that's another kind of, I don't say ignorant way to do it, but that's a way that's never going to really win the GPP, okay? So this is what people will be doing that are smart. And then that's not it. I mean, you can't just be smart. You've got to be smarter than the smart. You've got to be able to fade the smart people. You've got to be able to pivot off the smart people. But this is what people are going to do, I think. They're going to run optimizers, and they're going to pick good plays, right? All right, they're going to make projections, upload projections. They're going to get, you know, Chase Elliott, Brandon Gogan, Stenhouse, the guys that, you know, are starting from the back. They have good projections, and whatever it is, whatever projection systems they're going to come up with, they're going to upload those, and they're going to run optimizers. And this is what they're going to do. They're going to put rules out, and they're going to say, okay, I want max. What are you going to say? Max 1. Let's say even max 2 in the top. Let's say they're 40. They're going to say max 2 in the top 20, maybe, or they might do a build where they say max, you know, between 1, exactly 1 in top 10, exactly 1 in next 10, exactly 1 in next 10, exactly 1 in next 10. So these are the builds that are going to be generated, okay, for the lineups that you're going to be competing against. Now, what a lot of people usually do is they set minimum salary requirements where they say, listen, I only want 49,000 or higher. So the people that just do that, they're, I don't want to say dead money, but that's, you know, those people are not particularly sharp when it comes to this particular contest, because what a lot of people are doing is they're saying, okay, I don't care if I'm going to leave salary on the table. You know, I'm just going to put no minimum. If I get a $40,000, you know, raw points, you know, if my raw points look good, and it's 40,000, that's fine. I'll leave 10,000 on the table. So don't worry about the leaving money on the table part, okay? And that's what a lot of people are going to do now. So I would say 50% of the people, or maybe more. Now I'll say only 25% of the people are still going to forget to take off that thing that says, you know, minimum 49.5 or whatever it is, and they're going to get kind of a bad combination of lineups. I would say a full 75% of the real good players or players that are be playing this nowadays are going to take that off. So they're going to leave money on the table too. So just letting you know what people are doing. So what I think the majority of people, of sharp people, are going to do is they're going to set up little like constructs, like they're going to do certain amount with 2 in the top 20, a certain amount of 2 in the top in 20 through 30, a certain amount of 2 and 30. And whether that's correct or not, okay, because listen, where you start, whatever, they're going to be shuffling around all over the place, and there's going to be racks, and there's going to be variance, all that kind of stuff. But that's what people are going to be doing. So when you're looking to pivot, you're not going to be looking to pivot, this is my opinion, based on price. You're going to be looking to pivot based on starting position. Okay, because that's the way I believe most people are going to set up their optimizers, at least the better players. So if you're going to be competing against them, you know, first of all, it's tough to beat good players, but that's where I think you should try to pivot, is within the starting position, range. Okay. Now keep in mind that pivoting this week, don't be intimidated. Okay. Because remember, when people run optimize, they'll run them by projections, and even if they put a great amount of randomness in it, they're still getting something too close to a median projection. Okay, and a median projection in a race like this is just nonsense. I shouldn't say nonsense. I mean, obviously one median is better than another, but the way these results distribute in a race like this is so wide that to make a guy with a median projection of, let's say, 2 points higher than another guy, say 20% more owned, is just ridiculous. So what you really need to do is take these these starting position tiers and try to pivot within that. Okay, so for example, let me make a build that I think not a build. Let me just tell you about some players, some drivers that people are going to do. Now, first of all, Chase Elliott is going to be very popular because it's a combination of, you know, he's got a good place differential situation, 27, and he's a good driver, right? So, and a good car. So that thing is going to draw a lot of ownership. Brandon Gogan from the 40 hole is always going to generate really good ownership, even though he's only 8,600. Because even though he's priced up to 8,600, because as I said, you're never going to have a problem with salary on a card like this. I mean, so people are not going to worry about, you know, they're never going to have to worry about who they can play based on salary. People are going to be able to get who they want. So the 8600 is not going to intimidate people off of Gogan, so he's going to get a lot of ownership. Ricky Stenhouse in 31, same type of thing. All right, I put in Chastain. He's probably going to get ownership too. I don't think that any of these dudes in the front, like Harvick, Logano, whatever, they're going to get some ownership, but only based on optimizers, right? Because people are going to, you know, set a thing saying minimum 1 from the top 12 or from the top 15 or the top 10, okay? So what I would say is that all of these guys are going to be somewhat, this is kind of hard to explain, but all these guys in the top 10 are going to be somewhat higher owned than mathematically they should be, right? And that's because people are going to see what I see and they're, okay, I need one guy from the top 12 because that's what always happens. So I'm just going to make sure to get one. So all these guys, well, I would say all these guys, but some of the guys are going to be higher owned than they maybe should be. And I honestly don't see any difference at all between these guys. Harvick, Logano, Truex, I mean, all these guys, considering the variance involved in this race, they all have just as good of a chance to finish first as anybody else on that tier. So what you have to do is pick the lowest owned of these top 10. Now, it's going to be hard to do, right? But you look at ownership projections and things like that. You can figure it out. And you could do it from kind of an instinctive thing. So I think some people might take Harvick just because he's Harvick and he does have the pole. And, you know, I wouldn't say some people might take him. I think projections might think he's just not the worst. But Hamlin is going to show up as between Hamlin and Busch, they're probably going to show up as like just significantly better plays. So they are going to, from a projection standpoint, just pop in for that much more ownership. And I really don't think they have any better chance to win than any of these others. So what I would do, and this is just me, is first of all, within this top 12 or top 10, I would probably go underweight on Hamlin and Busch, for example. Probably underweight on Harvick maybe. And I would probably go overweight on somebody like Keselowski, because he looks like the most brutal play of them all, right? Because he's not Kevin Harvick, all right? He's not Logano, who has a good history, and he doesn't have the place differential of Hamlin and Busch. So those guys are going to pop in much better projections. Keselowski might be the one that gets the least ownership of all these, so I would make sure to go overweight on him. And then, as gross as it is, maybe Almirola, right? So I'd like to do the same type of thing in that I want to take someone from the top 12, because you just can't have everybody from. But what I would do is go for the lower owned of those top 12. So it would be somebody like Almirola, Byron, Keselowski. Those would be my 3 guys from there. So normally I would say, I'm not taking Almirola from the 5 when I have, for example, Blaney from the 9 or Harvick from the 1. But in this race, with all the variants involved, I might just opt to do that. So that's the way I would handle that first tier. Right now, I'm going to play 20 lineup, so I'm going to probably, what I'll end up doing is I'll build, and I'll do the similar type of build, but what I'll do is I'll either X out or, I'll do max 1 of, and I'll indicate the popular guys from each tier, and I'll go max 1 of those 4 popular guys, or something like that. But I'm really, really stoked with the way I'm going to be building. And again, variance is what it is, and I can't really control that. But we'll see if it actually comes in. But that's really not the point. So now let's look at this next group, like the group that are like, okay, people are going to say, okay, I want to do min 1, but no more than 1, from say the 11 to 20 range. Right. So let's take a look at those. So we already talked about Hamlin, right? So there's Dillon, Busch. Now, who of these guys are going to be popping in the majority of the optimals? All right. So I'm going to leave that to you to kind of, do your homework on that. But to me, Busch, as I mentioned, Hamlin, the 10, Kurt Busch might pop as a decent idea. So he would be probably a little bit too popular. He'd be one I'd probably want to fade a little bit. Boyer, okay. We've got Jimmy Johnson down here. I don't like. I'm not saying I don't like him. I mean, he's fine. Actually, I don't mind him with respect to these other top tens. All right. So for me, again, I'll do the same thing. I'll put, max 1 or between 1 and 0. So 1 and 0, I would say probably 1, or between 1 and 2, maybe about exactly 1 in this range. But I would probably go either X Kurt Busch, or again, put him in my popular group of 4, which we're going to get to later, or group of 5, and not play as much of him. Okay. Then Chris Buescher, I don't think is going to be that popular, so he might end up someone I get more of. Chris Boyer, but Clint Boyer. So again, that's what I'm doing is looking within the ranges of starting positions to find these types of pivots. Okay, so then what people are going to say, okay, I'm going to do 1, or maybe people aren't that late. I think people are a little lazier. They're going to go also. They're going to go between maybe 3, or between 3 and 4, between 20 and 40. Okay. So what's interesting about this between starting position 20 to 40 range is everybody's kind of in the same boat, right? They're hoping to not wreck, and if they do wreck, they don't lose as many place differential points to the guys in the top 10, right? So first thing I would say, and we're going to talk about these guys that are from 20 to 40, is that say Chase Elliott at 27. First of all, the reason why I don't like him, I shouldn't say I don't like him. The reason why I think he's going to be is too popular is there's more risk associated with him than people think, okay? Because just because he's in the 27 doesn't mean doesn't have wreck potential, because he's good. And in this sense, being good kind of hurts him, because he's not going to be just kind of hanging out in the back and just hoping that everybody wrecks and move up and finish the race. He actually wants to win. So he's going to weave through the field and then battle for the lead, and he could wreck. So it's not like he's a lock or anything like that. So he's a guy from an ownership perspective, he's going to pop as from a median perspective, having a good results, but from a range of outcomes perspective relative to ownership, he might be someone you want to fade, because he's got win potential, but he's also got wreck potential. And if he's going to be 50% owned, right, probably want to fade him, or at least go underweight, or even better, construct a build where you don't have all of the chalk. Okay. Other guys that I think are going to be popular: Ricky Stanhouse Jr. from 31, Brendan Gogan, as I mentioned, from the 40. And again, he's going to have extra ownership from the 40, just again from a psychological perspective, because people like to play. The 40 for some reason is going to be viewed as much farther back than the 39 for whatever, just psychological thing. But again, people are going to play optimizers. He's going to pop as a great median play, so he is going to get insane amount of ownership. Who's to say that he doesn't wreck too? You know what I mean? And there's a certain outcome, range of outcomes, where he at 50% ownership just busts. So what I would do again is I would again to take advantage of the people that might be doing max or min 1 between 30 and 40. I would take lower owned guys in that 30 to 40 range. And, even Stenhouse might even be too popular for what I'm trying to talk about. So maybe you go J.J. Yaley at 4,900. And what that kind of helps you do is leave money on the table, which is going to be a less popular build still. Joey Gaze, 5,500. I'm not so into him, but that's a driver decision. I'm not too interested in talking about driver decisions. Suarez, but any of these guys in the 30s, I think by their natural position in the field, make for really good pivots from these other guys in their price ranges. In their driver position range, which I said is kind of the key to making this work. So that's where I'm at for this race, and I honestly can't tell you right now where I'm going to end up as far as my lineups go, because I'm going to be looking at ownership and looking at, again, relooking at research and things like that. But that is, I think, 100%, and based on my assessment of the way DFS works, stock market works, everything works, that you're supposed to play something like this. You know what everybody else is doing, okay? You know what all the good players are doing, and you know the variance involved in this particular sport, okay, and this particular race within this sport, and you want to pivot off of it just a little bit to get yourself the opportunity to win the whole thing by yourself. And you have a chance. Like, it's very, let's put it this way, there's 6 starting positions, right? For those of you that play NASCAR and MMA and LOL and whatever, how often do you get a chance to actually, in a 6-slot sport, have a chance to get a unique lineup that actually has a shot to win? Not very often. But in a race like this, you can do it. So I am really recommending that if you've never played multiple lineups, you try to do it for this race. I might, you know what, I might actually max out the 150, the mini max, okay? Because again, I don't want to spend the money on maxing out this thing, but I might actually, what's it, 50 cents or whatever it is, $1? I might do that and work on my script. And again, just do max 1 between Elliott, Gauguin, and Stenhouse, for example. Are these going to be the 3 most popular? Probably, maybe. Max 1 between those 3, or max 2, or something like that. And then you can let the projections like bang out the rest, but make sure again that you, and this is all DFS, right, is know who you're competing against in all life, know who you're competing against, know what they're doing if you can, and figure out how to take advantage of knowing what they're doing. And that's about it for the wild and woolly Daytona NASCAR Cup race for Saturday.